Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Strategy Series, a series of events where we dive deep into the debatable topics of the Middle East business landscape. Today, we are joined by leading MEP and construction experts who are here to talk to us about what is happening in the smart building and HVAC design sectors. And so without further ado, please allow me to pass it on to my co-host Almas, who will take and kickstart the conversation. On to you, Almas.
Thank you, Julian. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I think we have a great panel of experts here in HVAC, in building codes, and of course, sustainability. So I think the agenda is going to be pretty simple. We're going to talk about innovation in HVAC and how we can work towards decarbonizing our buildings and work towards UAE's net zero goals. So to set the tone for the discussion, this is not just a discussion. Let's treat it as a collaborative, event where we are exchanging ideas, learning from each other. And so, as she said, feel free to jump in, and if you have a point to make, feel free. To kick off the discussion, let's start with a topic that directly impacts how we can align with the UAE's net zero goals. Retrofitting and upgrading the existing buildings. I want to start with you, Srinivasan. Could you share your insights on the most effective HVAC retrofit strategies and how that aligns with the UAE's net zero goals?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Srinivasan Rangan. I'm the Senior Director of Engineering for Taqeef Middle East. And thank you for having me here. Okay. So the first thing, let's look at it from a perspective. Where is UAE in this, the overall global equation? UAE has taken leadership by hosting COP28, and then subsequently they've taken leadership and active measures in defining, their road steps and roadmap moving forward. So some of them in the space of building code, I would say, is they've targeted to reduce the energy efficiency by about 35% compared to the 2014 building codes. That's with respect to the building codes. The second thing is in the domain of replacement and retrofits, 15,000 buildings are going to be retrofitted over the next, up till 2030. And then the target in terms of energy reduction is 50% up till 2030, and a very ambitious target of 81% reduction in the in greenhouse emission, cutting down the emissions. So that's the kind of active targets and goals which have been taken. And from Taqeef's perspective, what we are trying to do is be aligned and align with the vision of UAE. So in the replacement and retrofit sector, I'd like to categorize this into three different types. You have equipment to equipment replacement, then you have energy solutions, and then you have energy performance enhancement measures. So that's how the replacement retrofits broadly gets defined. And Taqeef is playing an active role in all these three segments by offering the right kind of solutions. So what we do when we get an opportunity is we do an energy audit, and in order to establish the baseline, and we understand where the energy right now is being what's the current status, and then we have a tiered offering depending upon the customer requirements. We have a premium offering which is focused on reducing the energy consumption significantly. And then we have standard tier offering where our customers are more conscious about the capital cost and how it is. So when you're talking about energy reduction, we are looking at solutions like VRF technology, which is currently 40% more efficient compared to the baseline requirements of UAE MEPS, minimum energy performance standards. And we've also got a very innovative product line for ducted inverters, where we offer almost about 30 to 40% reduction compared to fixed speed ducted products. And continuously we are launching an entirely new range of say water-cooled centrifugal chillers and applied products which are using the latest technologies like magnetic bearing and a comprehensive range using R1234Z. So with these kind of measures and also being very conscious of the impact refrigerant is going to place in the next few years, we have launched R32 refrigerant ducted inverter products. So with this, we believe that we are contributing significantly to the goals of which has been set off, and we are aligned. And having sold that, we have having offered all these solutions, we have within an organization a dedicated team of subject matter experts. In my team, head of engineering, and they work on developing the right kind of energy management tools, energy solutions, return on investment, in order to communicate and give the right kind of project feasibility reports to customers. We support it with a sustainability training program for our customers. So in which we are focused not only training the consultants and contractors, but also focused on training the entire HVAC industry for installation and commissioning, which is during the life cycle of the product. So these are all the strategies that Taqeef is right now doing.
That's brilliant, Srinivasan. Thank you for sharing these strategies. But building on that from a developer's point of view, Rahul, we'd like to hear from you. How would you like to add to this? What are your views on these retrofit strategies for HVAC?
So first of all, good morning. I'm Rahul. I'm from Vassal Properties. I look after sustainability at Vassal Properties. Excellent points. To start off, how energy audits are organized, and the capacity that we have in the market, and what Taqeef has is representative. We have the expertise in the market. So we at Vassal, from our side, we've been very active in retrofits. As the owners of the assets, we've pushed forward for efficiency and renewables as well. So to come to your question about common retrofits that we have in the market now, we've seen retrofits have taken up. Especially, you can call it a spike maybe in the last 2 years, this year and the last, especially with the year of sustainability. Everyone's been aligned with it, the same vision. So for us, it's always been about getting the low-hanging fruits first, with lighting and all of that. And then you go into the HVAC retrofits. And something that we've seen a lot of is VFD replacements. We've seen VRF upgrades. We've seen demand control ventilation. So these are some of the very common retrofits that we see across the portfolio. The sad part is, in spite of all the efforts we put, we still have a big target in front of us, like you rightly said, with the 2050 targets and also the 2030 targets. So that's the struggle to align with it. Yeah.
Thank you, Rahul. Imran, I want to know from you. Moving on to the financial aspects. How can building owners balance the cost that comes with retrofit, the HVAC retrofit, and how does that align with in terms of the long-term benefits like energy savings and energy efficiency?
Thanks for the question. Good morning, everyone. Myself is Imran Sheikh. I'm the director of MEP at Roundtable Middle East, and I'm also the chair of the SIPSA UAE committee. Now, retrofit is a very important topic, and like Rahul mentioned, it's really picked up after COP28, basically. As Roundtable, start of the year, we had a global initiative which was launched, which was the Building Retrofit Assessment Guide. And we call it Respect, Review, and Renew. And what does that mean? Based on the analysis which the guys did globally and our experts, we realized that when we truly speak about carbon savings, and when we don't consider the existing building, it takes around 80 years to reap out the actual whole life cycle benefit of the carbon side of things. So that's why you need to first look at the existing assets first and see how you can do the retrofit of it, refurbish it, and add more benefit to the client. So I think as consultants, that advice is very important. In terms of balancing cost to long-term benefits, again, you need to provide the clients with that whole life cycle carbon analysis to look at what is the actual assets, and then what benefit it brings in. And that's what we call it, like a performance-based approach rather than a spreadsheet approach, to go in and just say like, these are the savings from, say, the lead existing building system, and you'll get like 35 points if you do X, Y, Z. It's important that you dwell into the systems and look at the holistic approach, maybe the the twin carbons and stuff like that to advise that. So what we highlight to the clients is and how we approach it is using the new systems which are much more energy efficient, so to existing ones, and then look at it from a whole life cycle analysis for over the 20 years and not in the short term. Yes, you're getting more bills initially, but if you look at it, the holistic approach, it provides you energy savings. I think that sort of thinking needs to be inculcated, and that's what we are seeing a good progress, like developers like Russell and some of the other guys, where they are looking for that particular approach. So I would say it's important to look at the holistic life cycle analysis to balance between the cost and the long-term benefits. Yeah.
Amar, I want you to add to that. Representing Ashtrib, we want to know what would you like to say?
Well, actually, if we are talking about HVAC industry, and first of all, my name is Amr Galal. I am Vice President for Ashri Falcon chapter here in UAE. Actually, as an engineering society for HVAC industry, we are developing a lot of standards, actually, mainly because I write some of them here because I cannot recall a lot of standards here. We have actually a building energy assessment professional, which is actually taking care of cost-effective HVAC retrofit systems and also taking care of focus on life cycle cost analysis as well. Still, we have also ASHI Standard 100, which is actually energy efficiency in existing buildings. So it gives us actually opportunity to understand what the energy efficiency retrofit while reducing carbon emissions. So in ASHRI, we have a lot of standards which help the developers, the engineers, manufacturers also to understand what the goals and what they have to do and the guideline, for each and every, let's say, step in the retrofit and in the existing building energy efficiency enhancement.
Thank you, Amar. Michelle, what would you like to say about this? Because you're coming from Emerge, right? So please tell us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Michel Abisab. I'm the General Manager of Emerge. Emerge is a joint venture between EDF and Masdar. We do solar projects, so it's a bit different from what my colleagues are specialized in. However, I come from Masdar City. I worked 10 years in Masdar City as an energy efficiency and cooling manager. So I was involved in a number of sustainable buildings, including the Siemens building, which is the first LEED Platinum building in the region, and in Abu Dhabi, sorry. And I've been also involved in the retrofitting of buildings in Masdar City and doing advisory services for other clients in the region. So I am, I have quite a good experience in the retrofits and the air conditioning industry. In my view, there's so many opportunities in this region. I mean, not just in the region, I think globally, there is a huge potential for energy efficiency because there are so many untapped opportunities. The low-hanging fruit that my colleague here mentioned are still present in so many buildings around us, going from thermostat set point to simple lighting retrofit to simple building automation fine-tuning. So there are so many opportunities already untapped. And in my experience, even buildings that are LEED Platinum, there is a huge potential for them to achieve operational excellence. So the potential is definitely there. We've seen it, all of us, I believe, no doubt. The technology is there, which our colleagues Taqeef and many other companies are currently offering the solutions. They are readily available and commercially attractive as well. But there are challenges, one of them being financing, because sometimes, not sometimes, like these solutions will come at a cost. Even if the payback is 1 or 2 years, you still need to invest. And for many developers or building owners, they would rather invest their money in producing what they know better. Maybe if it's a factory producing cars, for example, they would invest in renewing the line for producing cars instead of investing in energy efficiency products. So here, all I'm saying is that the technology is there. The financial burden is still a burden, although there are solutions like performance contracting where an ESCO will come and invest, and they will put the money up front so that the end user will be benefiting. And there are other incentives in place. Another challenge which I see very prominent, especially in UAE, is the fact that the occupant of the space is not the owner of the space. And that's a big challenge, because why would you want, I mean, as an occupant, maybe you will leave the space in 1 year. So why would you want to invest, even if the payback is 1 year, which is already very attractive? If you're leaving in 1 year, then it doesn't make sense. So there are few challenges which we need to address. And just moving to the solar part, I mean, of course, demand side management is very important. It is always the first thing you should do, is to manage your demand. To do that, you need to do audits, you need to retrofit, starting by low-hanging fruit up to intensive retrofits. And then we need to think about solar as well, because in this region, solar is very important. Of course, the sun shines almost every day. We have today, the solar components are the cheapest ever. And we are, as a company, we have more than 200 megawatts already installed in the UAE. These are installed on buildings, on businesses, on serving businesses. We don't do utility scale. So there are many examples. I'll give you a few. Warner Brothers Abu Dhabi, for example, we've put 7 megawatts on the rooftop of that building, offsetting around 30% of the energy used in the building. So yes, demand side management is very important, but we need to also complement it with solar if there is space. Of course, some buildings you don't have space, maybe the roof is occupied, or so I'll leave it there that yes, we have great potential. We should also think about supply side management along with demand side management.
100% agree to that, and I'll come back to that. I have more to add to that, but moving on, I want to bring Jamila and Mohammed in the conversation. So the UN's cooling pledge that was initiated at COP28 of reducing cooling-related emissions by 68% by 2050, and of course increasing access to sustainable cooling. I want to know from you, Jamila, how are we responding to that today? How is the industry responding to these demands?
I'll probably speak from the work that we've been doing for the past 2 years with the local stakeholders. So under the leadership of Her Excellency Razan, who was COP28 high-level champion, and with really the support of Emirates Green Building Council, we formed the first UAE Leaders Developers Forum in the UAE, which has around 12 of the mega developers of the UAE. Inshallah, Wasl will join us soon. And what we did in year one, which was last year, is map the baseline. We identified there's a lot of ambition within the UAE developers, but they hadn't coalesced as a single voice. So we mapped the opportunities, the challenges, and the current practices. What we are working on this second year, leading up, we'll finish the work, inshallah, early 2025, is develop voluntary sustainability criteria where the developers will set the bar and move the needle, because the Ministry of Energy is already working on DSM full program looking at cooling, retrofits, building code upgrades, etc. So that suite of policy updates is coming, but policy moves a bit slower than market. And I think really to move forward for the UAE to respond, you need to tap all doors, right? From policy to demand to supply as well. And sometimes demand moves supply. So we're working a lot with the developers. I think one of the main challenges, and building really on what Michel was saying, although technology is here, sometimes translating it into specifications and developing the business case is not that straightforward. So although, masalan, we were looking at ASHRAE, and do you look at ASHRAE 2019 or ASHRAE 2022, which one is better, which one is more practical, which one is market ready, and then translating that into specific HVAC specifications, and then per HVAC type, and are we looking at VRF, are we looking at cooling from a district cooling, are we looking at split window systems, and you don't have that granularity. And then translating that into CO2 reductions, into energy bill reductions, into something that the developer can justify as a capex is also difficult. And sometimes the business model also changes. Some developers are owners and asset managers. Other developers build to sell, right? And that changes a lot whether somebody is ready to pay upfront for a more efficient system or for a building retrofit. But it doesn't mean every model has a solution. So even if you're a developer to sell, you could justify the capital cost of more efficient systems or retrofitting if you're able to market it as utility bill reductions, but you have that number, right? And I think there needs to be a bit more dialogue and then translating into other people's languages. That's number one. And number two, there are players that today we're not tapping into at all, facility managers. They're just there, they take the contract. They have no onus, no encouragement, no incentive, and sometimes are not made nor accountable nor encouraged to play a much more active role in increasing efficiency, whereas they could easily play a critical role in that translation, even as bearers of the financial transactions, right? And how do you manage the risk of paying back your debts over an 8-year period on something that's leased out? The facility managers could be the main point of contact. I don't know. There are a lot of solutions that could be customized, but you need this supply chain linkages so that the stakeholders talk together. But the good news is everybody's moving forward. So that's how are we responding? We're responding by more dialogue and cross linkages, but there's still a lot of bridges to build. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamila. We want to tap into your expertise, Mohammed, on this. What are your thoughts on how the industry is responding to the UN pledge?
Thank you very much, Almas. Pleasure being here today. My name is Mohammed Amir. I'm Regional Director of Operations with the International Code Council, or ICC. We are a leading global source provider of building codes and standards, in addition to a whole bunch of ancillary services that taps on building safety, from testing, inspection, certification, accreditation, trainings and credentialing. So everything that has to do with building safety, we are involved in. I'm probably going to tackle this question in an unorthodox way from the other side of the coin, which is related to building envelope. We're probably having an overlap with ASHRAE on this. So we are mainly into building envelope rather than system efficiency. I keep saying this, and Nabil, spot on, you came at the right time. I like the example that Nabil always gives, about the fridge that is, it's open and you have a compressor working, but when the door is open, you're putting more pressure on the HVAC systems. And going back to the cooling pledge, and Jamila as an expert, she's highlighted, and you as well, as you've highlighted, 68% reductions, which is around 7% of the total of the global emissions, and it's expected to triple by 2050. More HVAC systems are being installed, more pressure is being put into buildings. The other side of the coin that I want to tap on is the buildings breakthrough agenda, which complements the cooling pledge. The breakthrough agenda was announced in COP26 as an objective, or as an ambition to cut emissions in high intensive carbon sectors like transportation, agriculture, the steel industry, and so on. Buildings was not considered, unfortunately, at that time, although more than 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions coming from buildings, and buildings are there to stay for the next 50 years or more. So in COP27, the buildings breakthrough was announced, and in COP28, it was in a nutshell adopted. We were glad to be part of the group championing the buildings breakthrough, because as a building codes developer, we have a moral responsibility into making sure that we have what we call the efficient building capacity put in place. Building safety, or building efficiency, or operational excellence, as you mentioned, is not about only efficient and modern building codes, but about accreditation, plan review, design, inspection, installation, maintenance, trainings and credentialing of people who are doing the installation, doing the inspection on building systems. So having this toolkit delivered to authorities having jurisdictions, in order to ensure that throughout the life cycle of buildings, we are maintaining this, what we call the operational excellence. We're working with ASHRAE on a standard 240p, which is monitoring greenhouse gas emissions throughout the life cycle of buildings. So this is the other side of the coin that, in our humble opinion, complements the cooling pledge for the HVAC system. So that's just in a nutshell. I can give more examples on how the efficiency in the design and maintenance, the design and installation. Unfortunately, probably maintenance is one of the items that is overlooked, even in HVAC systems, but I can give more examples as the discussion goes on. So
I think it'd be interesting to get someone from FM as well the next time we have this discussion. It'll be nice to hear from their perspective what they think about it. Nabil, since you just came in, I would just quickly like to know your opinion on the UN cooling pledge and how we, as the HVAC industry, are responding to that.
cooling pledge is very important for equipment because it basically says that the energy efficiency of equipment has to improve by 50% by 2030 compared to 2022 level. So the governments have to start incrementally increasing the minimum energy performance standards to reach that. We are actually now in the process of releasing the first increment for UAE, which will increase the energy efficiency. A lot of the equipment manufacturers are also have signed on the pledge, saying that they have product that can meet that new energy efficiency. I think in terms of carbon emission reduction, this will be a great help because as we know, 70% of your electric bill at home comes from HVAC. So when you reduce the electric consumption of HVAC, you're going to reduce carbon emission. So we are working with, for example, MOIAT right now, which is the Ministry of Energy and Advanced Technology, to come up with new regulations. And this also has to be also revised in the building codes, because building codes also require minimum energy efficiency for equipment. And it's not just HVAC, it's appliances in general. So we have water heaters, you have refrigerators, all of those should be improved as well. There's a lot of work has already been done, for examples in buildings on lighting, converting to LED, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on HVAC systems as well.
Thank you, Nabil. I think we'll move on to our next topic of discussion, which is achieving our NDC goals, which Julianne will moderate.
Right. So we've talked about retrofitting existing buildings and replacements and the whole idea of decarbonizing the existing buildings in our region. But I think let's take a step back and really look into why we're all having this discussion today in the first place. And it's, to improve sustainability with these HVAC solutions and to ultimately lead us to the national decarbonization goals of our country. So I'm going to actually start by asking Srinivas, and I think this is a good question for you. Collaboration is a big thing that's happening in not just our industry, but I think with any industry that needs to create change. So the question is, how do you think HVAC manufacturers, contractors, and maybe even consultants collaborate to accelerate the adoption of these sustainable solutions? Why is it important? And why do you think, what are some challenges that you've faced in Taqeef when it comes to collaborating with different stakeholders?
So that's a great question, right? I mean, the biggest impact for any building project is timely intervention, right? So when you go into replacement or retrofits, then you are trying to improve what is already set. The incremental impact that you're going to make is very less. But when you have an early engagement on the project at the concept stage, then that's connecting all the minds, putting the best technology and on the table for evaluation, and which can be reviewed by all the stakeholders, which is primarily the end users and the consultants at that stage. So from Taqeef's perspective, what we do is we have a dedicated team of engineers, subject matter experts from engineering, who are very well trained and who work with the consulting engineers and with the factories to bring in the most energy efficient products at the concept design stage. So when at that stage of the blueprint of the project, when it is evaluated, there are presentations, there are technical evaluation, feasibility reports are given. Then once the consultant is convinced, then we move to the next stage from concept to design. And during that stage, you also have to submit feasibility reports, why this and why not. So comparison of various types of options are done. Now, having said that, I think the good thing, positive thing that you are seeing is now every end user has got a separate dedicated department towards sustainability, which is an increasing trend over the last, I would say, maybe thanks to COP. And, now we see more of this happening, and which is making things more easier for everybody, because they are doing vendor qualification, they are making sure that the right products are there with the right suppliers. And in order to support that, we also have now regulations which are getting mandated, which is all falling in place. And these regulations have got categories which are now more systematic as compared to the past. You have grading of technology, you have star ratings. So, the more educated decisions are being taken as compared to what used to be in the past. So now we're talking about stakeholders. We have end users, we have consultants, we have the best engineers working from the manufacturers, and all of them together putting the best solution. And contractor is relatively at a later stage of the project when they get engaged. So pretty much they have got a well-defined boundaries which are set within which they have to pick the vendors. So they get involved, and in today's context, I've seen a lot of these contractors are making more educated decisions. They also have their own sustainability goals and targets. So I think the industry is moving all together in the same direction. Maybe not everybody doesn't see the other part of it, perhaps, okay, but everybody is moving towards, and it is converging. So I think which is very positive, and I don't see this only in the UAE. It is, I would say, because of the 2050 targets, global net zero, the whole globe is, kind of converging towards that, and you see a lot of international consultants into play into this market, and we are also working with all these global consultants with offices all over the world. So I believe that there's a good bit of teamwork and collaboration which is happening right now. But as we speak, there is always a scope for more, right? There's more organized, collaboration and teamwork is required. And talking about the challenges, I think the end goal is visible. Okay, the short-term goals which Nabil mentioned are also visible. But then connecting the dots from this short-term goals to the end goal is an opportunity, and it's a challenge right now because we do not know. So as equipment suppliers and as distributors of products, we work very closely with the factories. And the moment any of the suppliers get a good visibility of the roadmap of energy efficiency right from today up till 2030 and subsequently up to 2050, then the resources can get organized in the factories, in the distribution, everywhere, and we will all have a very good visibility of the roadmap to be followed. The resources will be put in. We spoke about financing, earlier, and that is a challenge, and those kind of things. So moment everybody starts putting in, then the equations are reset, and I would feel that we would all be heading. But having said that, I think Jamila mentioned it's a big challenge. There have been so many stakeholders. It's easier said than done, but that I believe is the biggest challenge the industry is facing.
Absolutely, and I think we have a good baseline as well. And I do want to know your opinions in this, Imran, from Rambol's perspective, collaboration, what do you feel about it, and how can we leverage, collaborating with different stakeholders to kind of propel the industry forward?
No, absolutely. I agree with what my colleague said over here. Collaboration is the key, and I think as consultants and different stakeholders, it's important how you bring that forward. I think it's an important responsibility as a consultant, as a designer. You bring in the right approach on day one with the developers, because as often with the misconceptions, maybe the right decisions are not taken. But if you bring in saying what the benefits are, what the end goals are, even if it's not a requirement on the project, usually it goes a long way. That's what we have felt. And like you mentioned over here, you need to do it at the initial stage, as a pre-concept and concept, going with the different solutions, which not only have the financial benefit and also have the energy analysis side of things. And there are different ways to put it together to show it's much more effective, to bring in not only on the capital cost side of things, but also on the long-term energy benefit, which can add to the brand value of the particular developer. So when we sell sustainability with the money tag associated with it in the right way, obviously, that adds a lot of value, and people, developers, and the different stakeholders connect to it because they see the financial value and benefit to it. The other thing, what we have, we have a sustainability toolkit assessment, which is open to everyone in the industry. Like those sort of initiatives has been done so that the sustainability is like embedded in the way you act and the things which you want to do. So that's important when you are going out there and when you promise that you want to be the partner for sustainable change, you need to act like that and bring in that value associated to that. Now, there were very interesting points from Jamila and the rest of the guys that there are different kinds of projects. One is like end user, where the asset is owned by the developer itself, and when it goes to the other people. Now, that we discussed with the municipality and a lot of other people as well. And if you see, and I'm sure colleagues around would be aware, there is a decree which is coming in May, which is about the carbon accounting for the various organizations. And we believe that's a very good positive change. We are still to see how it impacts everyone. If you read the particular decree, it emphasizes quite a bit on sustainability and the carbon accounting, and there is penalization for companies which will not follow that. So I think that will bring in a lot of positive change and help close the gap which the industry is facing at the moment in that regard. Now, from the SIPSE side, what we have done at the moment, or in the next week or in the first week of Jan, that will be the TM65 guidelines will be launched in the region for Middle East, and that's focusing on the embodied carbon associated to the MEP system, which was always a difficult know-how system. Now that will, given that we have got majority consultants within the committee itself, we want to get to the specification mode where we push the manufacturers and we push the contractors to come across the table, bring in that sustainability approach, and also be liable or responsible for the carbon accounting. So those sort of changes, I think, will push it in the right direction and help to bring in all the stakeholders. And I like the terminology which you use, converge it towards the direction which we are looking at and bring in that sustainable change.
All right, thank you, Imran. I think you're right, where we need to converge and really look into it from a different perspective, and that's the only way we can achieve great things. Now, I'm going to look into the developer side of things. I think this is for you, Rahul and Michelle. Do you think it's important to involve, and I'm sure Mohammed and Jamil, you can add on to this as well later, but what role does regulatory harmonization kind of play in creating a unified approach? From a developer's perspective, how did you work with your local governments, and how are you working with someone like, let's say, Emirates Green Building Council or ICC to kind of ensure that your processes match what the national decarbonization goals are?
Okay. So this is actually a continuation of what we were just talking about, the collaboration between the team, right? So the biggest gap that we've seen, we spoke about contractors, consultants all working together and working with synergy. So the biggest gap we suffer from in the sustainability journey is the design and build team from the operations team. So that gap and that sort of break really destroys a lot of projects that we've seen. So yeah, and coming back to regulatory frameworks that support this, we've seen the environment is different. The regulatory environment during design and build is very different from what you see in operations phase for some reason. And that's I mean, it can have pros and cons depending on what you want to do in the operations phase. But of course, the regulatory environment is different. So when in operations phase, when the asset is occupied and you're actually paying your utility bills, when you want to do something, the environment is different. The bodies and the stakeholders are different. And you can see if you just take a random survey of the buildings in UAE that have gone through retrofit programs, and the approaches, the criteria that they put are all very subjective on how they want to approach energy savings. So you can see some very questionable actions taken as well. So standardization there, harmony between design and build regulations as well as operational phase can really bridge the gap. So what you want at the end of the day is something that ensures your design criteria are met. Any energy saving that you do should be backed up by science, should be backed up by technical intent, what you want to deliver to the building, not compromise on anything. So that sort of harmony is really important, I feel. As you see more and more projects claim savings and they go about it their own way. So that's very key, yeah.
This is amazing because I cannot emphasize it more. There's a big gap between design, construction, and operation. And we have both seen it because we have both been in the same situation where we were involved in design, and then when we moved to operations, we realized that things are not as great as they seemed. And you mentioned a great point about there is about the carbon accounting coming soon. This is going to be a game changer, I believe. Why? Because today we have, all the codes we have are related to the building construction. If we look at Istidama, if we look at Dubai Green Building Code, if we look at LEED, yes, you have LEED for existing building, but let's not, it's not mandatory here, right? And I think only a few buildings have followed LEED for existing building. So yes, you have so many buildings claiming to be LEED Gold, LEED whatever, and so on. And this is great. I'm not saying this is wrong. You should start by a great design. This is a must. Because as you mentioned, the sooner you hit the subject, the better the results are. If you do proper concept design, of course, you would evaluate multiple ideas instead of just moving with only one idea all the way, and then realizing it wasn't the right solution at the last minute, and then things will be difficult to change. So yes, doing proper design up to construction is key, and doing construction supervision in the right way is also key. Like I've seen construction workers shaving insulation material. Why? Because the wall was not straight, and these things are not usually checked by the municipality. So carbon accounting and carbon penalties on carbon is very important. I hope it's coming. This is amazing. I never heard this before, so thank you for the good news. And because this is really when the developer or the building occupant or the facilities management will be liable for what is really being consumed in the building. Otherwise, you just claim, you celebrate LEED Gold, whatever, and at construction completion, and then everything is forgotten after even few years. Because any system, whether it's an HVAC system, a lighting system, any energy user in the building must be fine-tuned, must be controlled. Even our human behavior has to be controlled. Because now give two people the same building, you will notice a totally different energy consumption, because the energy consumption is majority driven by the behavior of the user. The user being the occupant and the facilities managers. And if there's no control over that, you will not achieve your results.
That's a really valid point. And I'm going to come back to that. Before that, I'll go to you, Jamila, because I do want to know your perspective on approaching this in a unified approach. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, one of the there are two tiers. There are two tiers to it. One is at a national level, and one is at a regional level. And the regional level, again, I'll point to Nabil because he highlighted it. I'll quote you. On the national level, what we identified with the developers, and I think the nature of the UAE, a lot of the developers are emirate focused. Few developers operate in different emirates. They realize it. I think where the people who see firsthand the lack of harmonization or the impact of lack of harmonization are everybody else, the contractors, the suppliers, the consultants as well. And the result is you have a challenge of economy of scale. So if you have one developer out of 25 demanding high-performing HVAC systems, doesn't become a strong business case for suppliers to have a big stock. Same problem you have with EVs, right? There's very little offering of EVs in the market because the demand's not high enough, and it's a vicious cycle, right? Lack of harmonization across the UAE, I think, prevents a harmonized way of maturing the market as well, right? So that's number one. And just a simple example, and I think our colleague from ASHRAE can attest to that much more. Like Istidama is still referring, I think, to ASHRAE 2010, and Dubai regulations refers to ASHRAE 2017 or 19, I forgot. And you have a lot of discrepancy, and then therefore you don't have a harmonized approach to building systems. You don't have a common understanding of what's the baseline performance. nor in delivering the buildings, nor in the operations. Again, building on what my colleagues already said. That lack of understanding the current baseline then also prevents us from understanding, as you were saying, what's the next step and the step after that. Like, what's our starting point and how do we improve on it? And that lack of visibility is a big challenge for everyone. And I think industry has a strong case for creating that common understanding. And it could be by emirate to say, well, Ras Al Khaimah, this is the baseline performance, Dubai, this is the baseline performance, so that then you start having a quantitative discussion. Everybody in this room is probably an engineer except me. And, and we all deal with numbers, and this is the way we calculate progress, but we lack the data, right? So that's number one. Number two, on a regional level, Nabil, and maybe you want to comment about that. Your comment on our average HVAC performance in the region is much below what it is in Europe, although we have a much higher demand for it. Do you want to elaborate? Sorry, I will pass on the...
Yeah, actually, according to the International Energy Agency in the Middle East, if you look at the minimum energy performance level set by the government and the available energy efficiency of products, most of the users, developers, end users are using the entry level, which is very close to the minimum of the government's regulation. Versus if you look at Europe, Japan, they use higher average. So this means that the developers have maybe are more keen to use higher energy efficiency product. And also one factor here is that the utility cost here is much lower. So people don't care much about using high efficiency products. A lot of in the region, the governments, they subsidize electricity, so the electricity is cheaper relative to other countries. But this also reflects on the fact that lack of awareness, education to end users. We need to work on this. And the unfortunate thing is that in this region, we usually sit and wait to see what happens in Europe and US and just mimic. But having forums like this and the platform that Jamila is working on is very helpful in terms of being more proactive and advising the government and the developers, working with developers also, because to implement any regulation, you have to have first the some proof of concept or projects that are implemented before the government can say I can do this. They need to know if it was done in the country or not. So having corporate responsibilities by some of the developers, starting to use higher energy efficiency products will kickstart this process, and this will eventually become norms and standards, right?
So I just want to add one point, if may I? Right? So Jamila mentioned about different emirates and having standards. Now, we from the equipment manufacturers kind of struggle because, see, it's economics, right? Finally, it has got to be technical versus commercial. It's a business. And within UAE, we have different standards, with Ras Al Khaimah perhaps having the highest in terms of energy efficiency requirements, whereas there are inconsistencies in the way products are measured in UAE, where it is measured at T3 conditions, whereas efficiency in Abu Dhabi is measured at T1 conditions. So when we are working with the factories, we do not have very clear understanding of what should we aim for. Even which baseline should we aim? So then we have to, it's more of a saying, okay, we want to be the best, to start taking positions, and then which all markets and which all emirates can we cater to, or which all countries we can cater to. So harmonization is extremely important to get the best out of the industry, so that all the manufacturers can invest properly. And to maximize, and that's also good for the market, because customers are going to get consistent products in similar efficiencies and competitiveness, right? So otherwise, some markets which are cheaper, suppliers would invest in cheaper products, which can get more, but the net result is impact on carbon footprint is not going to be where it should be. So that's one, I think, one of the most important things where we have to do. And I'm also the chair of Eurovent Middle East and also member of AHRI. And here I see that there's always a lobbying between various manufacturers trying to sometimes, not always, sometimes trying to pull down the efficiency so that it becomes more economical based on their production investments. So So this is a global market. There are players from Far East to US to everybody coming in. Everybody wants to compete and get their fair share, right? And then if there are lack of consistent regulatory guidelines, there's kind of a push and pull. But also at the same time, I've also seen that Moat, when they came back, they've given responses saying, hey, though you have asked for the lowest energy efficiency, we have seen the database of all the other suppliers, and you have products and technologies which are available, so they're not accepting so I think that's where I think some kind of mandate would really help the industry.
I would like to add one more thing on this topic. It's very nice and interesting. So another thing that I noticed in my career that was a challenge, which is the lack of control on consultants. For example, from the equipment perspective, yes, we are selecting, tier 1, highly efficient air conditioning units. That's fine. In the specs, it's done, and we will purchase it. But the consultant may actually oversize the system to the point whereby, first of all, the cost will increase, definitely, as a result. Second, the equipment will not operate at its optimum design condition, because majority of the case, it is actually oversized at the peak condition. So in normal condition, this machine will work at maybe 20% of its capacity, which will result in drop in efficiency. So there is no control over that. And I remember, I give you one example that happened to me. When we were designing the Siemens building in Masdar City, the designer proposed the total cooling load per square meter was about 35 square meter per ton. And this is elite platinum building designed with a great envelope, with low infiltration, and so on and so forth. When we did our calculation, we noticed that it's definitely, it's much more efficient than that. So we should achieve something around 75 square meter per ton. We challenged the consultant. The consultant was, refusing to do any changes, because, of course, they care about safety. They care about, for them, if the building is undersized, it's a killer. But if the building is oversized, nothing wrong there, because they are not being paid for oversized, or they are not penalized if if the system is oversized. Today, I can tell you from measurements on site, after the Siemens building has been operating for more than 5 years, our cooling load is around 75 square meter per ton, total cooling load of the building. And whenever I tell this number to any consultant, they will be surprised. And these are real numbers, but these numbers are not communicated to the public. So this is why I think a communication between, or some control over consultants is needed, and currently we don't have such control.
Sorry, I was on the other side, the regulator side in Dubai, and the biggest challenge was they also don't want a rejection from the local authorities, and it goes back to benchmarking and sharing the data, like making it available. Then your argument would have been so much easier if you had a public benchmark to say, you know what, you're oversizing, but there's really no publicly available data.
Yeah, just to add on that as well, and that's very important, the benchmarking of the data, because now in the CIPSE Technical Committee, one initiative which we started was exactly for that, to see what is the actual performance of the building, the various buildings which are operational, and we reached out to major developers. I won't be taking the names, and they were reluctant to give the data. We approached them as an institution, because the whole purpose is to study the actual performance of the buildings and everything, so that as consultants we can see how we can refine that further without compromising the safety and the other things as well. So I know, like Masdar and everything, they share the data, but some of the other, there is an obstacle there or a challenge there which needs to be looked at. But that's where, like, to bridge the gap between operation as well as design, one thing which we are looking at is the neighbors. It's a certification program which focuses on performance-based approach rather than just a certification spreadsheet, where even the operation team is into the picture to ensure the building is performing as per design as well. So I think those sort of initiatives will help bridge the gap. Yeah.
Allow me just to zoom out a bit, and I resonate with everything that has been said. And taking from what you said about the performance-based and about the role of regulators, the private sector, we are living in a region where authorities having jurisdictions are scheme owners. We call them demand drivers. And the private sector, since we work closely with all the parties, I mean, ICC as a non-government organization working closely with all these parties in the building safety. So consultants, contractors, manufacturers of building systems, including HVAC systems, architects, designers, standards development organizations like UL, NFPA, ASHRAE, even outside the realm of HVAC systems, we have a responsibility, or like they have a responsibility into pushing innovation in the market. So they present the innovation, and then the regulators regulate the innovation by mandating laws. If tomorrow a law gets in place that mandates a specific mandate for EV, you will find all the infrastructure in Dubai turning in or like supporting the EV or like charging stations. Same thing that happened with 3D concrete printing. The moment the mandate was there, 25% of buildings to be 3D printed by 2030, you found a guideline being published by Dubai municipality with the help of the private sector. So I think there's a huge responsibility on the private sector to push for such metrics. Like if we're talking for the HVAC, radiant cooling, VRF, even from a building envelope perspective, advocating for lowering the U value for insulating materials compared to what's happening in the UK or Europe. We have the capacity, or the country has the capacity, but there has to be a more push from the private sector and showcasing case studies through pilot projects that this is working. I know that Nabil is a great advocate for radiant cooling, and he knows very well that showcasing a pilot project is the way moving forward with authorities to get their buy-in and make it like a national priority. So this is a very important aspect. But the performance-based design is one critical point, because we at ICC, 3D concrete printing is a perfect example of performance-based design. Off-site construction is a perfect example of a performance-based design. So you have to think outside the box. We don't have everything to be prescriptive. Some things have to be performance. That would require a specific criteria or guidelines to be produced or to be developed by the private sector or by the authorities with the help of the input of the private sector in order to make such systems or such methodologies mainstream. So this is like it's a two-way communication between the private sector and the public sector. So
I think we had a really good dynamic conversation there. We'll take a short 10-minute break, and then we'll revert back and talk about what it means for the future.
So I think it's very important. It comes back to what I was talking earlier about, the gap in operations and, the regulatory environment. So having something, as you described, something that's mandatory and a qualification requirement for technicians who operate on the HVAC systems is, I think everyone here can resonate, because we've already spoken about the gaps in operations and the incentives. So if the incentives don't drive it, the regulations will. And I think that's a step in that direction. And if it's something that's from the government, if something that's mandatory, it'll be easy for us to specify it. It'll be easy for us to include it in the FM contracts. So yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Thanks, I want to know from Imran as well what he thinks about it.
No, absolutely. That's where we face like some of the gaps in the industry. So the certifications and the regulatory frameworks, that's what drives the region. We know like when something is regulated by the authority, that's where things starts moving quickly. That's the nature of our market over here. So definitely upskilling on all sides, be from the government enforcement to the consultants, contractors, and even at the technician level, is a key thing to drive this.
Thank you, Imran. Nabil, from RE's point of view, how involved can RE be, in ensuring that these certification programs are in place and mandated for technicians?
Yeah, AHRI has a sister company or under our umbrella called North American Technician Excellence Certification Program. It's it's very important to do this in this region because, for example, in Europe and the US, it's mandated by the government for anybody that touches HVAC equipment to be certified because you are affecting basically environment by dealing with refrigerant. You're affecting efficiency. If you don't install the unit properly, it's going to be have lower efficiency and capacity. And as we see in this region, you could be working in a laundromat as a makwaji, and the next day you become a HVAC technician. So there's not much training that takes place. We've talked to several government ministries about this. The problem is there's lack of role and responsibility in terms of who should decide that. Is it the Department of Labor? Is it the Department of Environment, Energy? Because it touches on all these aspects. So we've actually are promoting that now, and a lot of our members are adopting this because it also helps them financially. If you have your technician trained, you're going to have less issues with equipment failure, equipment downtime, and you're going to save money on warranty cost. So it's a win-win situation for everybody, for the government, for the technicians themselves in terms of advancing their careers, learning new things, feeling good about their future, earning more money. So it's something that we're promoting across all channels. It's good for also, it helps reaching the goals of decarbonization, reducing energy consumption, etc.
Thank you, Nabil. Mohammed, I want to know from you, what are the key gaps you think in the current regulatory framework for HVAC maintenance, and how can building codes evolve to support the life cycle efficiency?
So I'm going to start from the end of the question, or regarding the building codes and its essence or role in maintaining the efficiency. Again, going back to what I've said at the beginning, from a building envelope perspective, focusing on items like insulation, high performance, or efficient insulation materials, high performance windows, reflective roofing materials. The more you make the buildings high performance, again, you put less pressure on the HVAC systems, and this opens the door for adopting renewable energy systems like solar water heating system, as an example, like radiant cooling system, and so on. We have, going to the gaps, we are proud of inaugurating or forming this group, what we call the Building Science Advisory Council group, ICC MENA Building Science Advisory Council, that comprises of building safety stakeholders. I was just talking to this with Srini in the break. It's like a think tank. We have representatives from all over the industry, consultants, contractors, manufacturers, SDOs. We have also Dubai municipality joined as well, and we were trying to get Moyat, but it takes a bit of time to get a government official, in addition to Dubai municipality, just to maintain impartiality. And one of the reasons was to, going back to the gaps, is there's a big focus, or there is already focus on the design and installation, but maybe not maintenance, or like regular maintenance on systems, or like system efficiency, or like systems installed in buildings. So this is one thing. The training that that Nabil mentioned is also another point, the benchmarking. So these are items that because the Building Science Advisory Council, as I said, is like a think tank. It's a testament to everyone's commitment to what they can bring to the table. We meet once or twice every year. We discuss the challenges, the opportunities, the prospects in the building safety. How can we improve and go above and beyond? One output of this group was the development of the 3D concrete printing, as an example. I don't want to digress from the main topic, but discussing aspects like A2L, or index, or the climate class for refrigerants. How can we improve the U values for insulation materials? So these are items that can be presented, put on the table, and for the authorities to try to utilize through a pilot project, and then accordingly change or update the regulations. And this is what we have seen through adopting, for instance, HRI standards for the energy efficiency, or benchmarking the energy efficiency for HVAC systems. From a building code perspective, the International Energy Conservation Code, the International Mechanical Code, the Plumbing Code, these are all codes that tap on the overall efficiency and operational excellence of buildings, including the HVAC systems installed. So that's just in a nutshell the building codes perspective and the gaps, the training, and I hopefully maybe Nabil can add more to this, the training and the maintenance, the regular maintenance, and of course incorporating technological advancements to HVAC systems, keeping up. And again, this is part of the private sector giving their input to the regulators.
But what international best practices can we adopt, Nabil and Jamila, if you both would like to add to that? Can the UAE adopt to ensure sustainable HVAC operations?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, there are a lot of training programs that are available today. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can start using those immediately. But to Mohammed's point, and also Michelle's point on why consultants usually over-design, because a lot of times when you buy equipment, it's you know, a lot of manufacturers, they submit a golding sample report, but what they produce on the manufacturing facility, I mean, the manufacturing line has less. Yeah, it's I don't want to say cheating, but tolerancing is wide. Not all companies, of course. So they end up over-designing. They end up, and because they know after installation, because the technicians and the maintenance and service people are not trained. As I was telling Imran, on day one, usually MEP consultant, they meet their design requirements in terms of capacity efficiency, but after day one, the equipment start degrading because lack of service, lack of maintenance will cause the equipment to lose efficiency. And so having trained technicians that can come back and know what to do in terms of maintenance and service will help keep the efficiency of the equipment at par with the design. And also today we are in the AI era. So, you know, consultants, MEP consultants, they have a lot of good tools like digital twinning. You can have building design electronically in front of you and can tweak things and know exactly what your building efficiency will end up being if you use this equipment or that equipment or this technology. And this saves time and money. And you don't have to oversize, because if you oversize, to Michelle's point, you're gonna the project's gonna cost more. The unit's gonna go on and off, and it's not gonna be as efficient. So this is all. It's not just technician training. It's also training of consultants, engineers. You have, for example, Eurovent. They're offering a program and you can talk about that more.
Yeah, Eurovent has launched. Thank you. Eurovent has launched the Leadership Academy, and right now the focus is on two major areas. One is on improved air quality training, so that's educating a lot of consultants and contractors. And the other one is a very active program for training technicians. And it's on F-gas, you know, the new refrigerants, installations, commissioning, everything. So it's a good comprehensive program that's there. Yeah. Besides, a few points which I think from the code's perspective, you know, where there are potential gaps. One is we have opportunity to improve market surveillance. I think products which are not, this thing, there's not a very clear yeah, you know, what you have sold is what has been delivered later. So that entire process, all throughout, benchmarking with what AHRA is doing or how it's done in Europe. So if units are picked up, the suppliers do not know where it is getting tested. There's no way you can defend, you know, the whole thing is not in place. So I think that thing puts a check and balance on surveillance. The second thing is, I believe surveillance can be extended for buildings which are operational. So in terms of maintenance practices, how well and what are the records which are being kept, so that random market surveillance, if it is done, and there are checks similar to our car, right? If it is done at this thing and there are stickers and, you know, stamps which are being kept, then we know that 100,000 kilometers has been done or miles have been clocked. Likewise, if records are kept and it gets digitally, it goes back to DM or so on maintenance, and an established system, I think we should be able to address some, say, the big issues.
Just adding to this point regarding the compliance in the tech business, and I think this is something that's on the under the radar or under the responsibility of the tech companies, the testing, inspection, and certification. Again, a lot of investment is on testing, a lot of investment is on certification, providing proof of compliance, but maybe a lot is being overlooked in the inspection side, installation and inspection. Proof of compliance is important, but proof of competency as well is equally important. How do we ensure that whatever is being installed, whatever is being inspected is done correctly or done as per a guideline or a benchmark?
Yeah, and taking a step back, where the problem originates, I would say, is because UAE has got a floating mass of technicians. They come from different parts of the world and they're all passing different exams, different curriculums. So finally, when they come and work over here, there are no common codes or practices. So they are getting trained by their supervisors and the organization, approaches. So that's where a potential gap can be there in terms of competencies. And that's where, safety and other issues can get compromised. So that's why it's so important to do something like a NATE certification or a Eurovent thing, which becomes more like a mandate, required.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think we'll move on to some forward-looking questions from Julianne.
Yeah. So before we end the conversation, I do want to touch upon two things. One of them is public awareness campaigns. Why are we here today? We're talking about educating the end users, and we've slightly touched upon it in our earlier session. But I think this is a question for you, Jamila, and how would you think public awareness campaigns or incentive drives maybe? And I do want to hear developers' perspective on that too. But let's start with you, Jamila. How can public awareness campaigns and incentive drives demand for more energy efficient and sustainable HVAC systems?
Public awareness campaigns have been going on for quite some time. I think every single energy authority in the UAE has had, Tarsheed, efficiency, DSM program, etc. So I don't think that's the main challenge. I think it's the additional layer of, specificity. So, okay, you have to be mindful of putting your AC on and off, put it at 24 degrees. And then so what? Like when you start repeating the message over and over again, sometimes it gets old. Of course, there's new generations, so it could be embedded in a unit in school. Okay, like it could be institutionalized. But at some point we have to dig deeper, and then when you dig deeper, you have to customize the message. So for consultants, it will be different. For contractors, your typical accountant probably will be the same as a school teacher in terms of awareness, like there's that level. But I think each one on this on this panel highlighted a different challenge in achieving optimal efficiency. And then that's where the awareness needs to happen. And I think this is the much more difficult job. How does a supplier make aware a consultant of the changes they need to do in their specifications? How does the how does the supplier make the contractor aware, or do you make the authority aware? And I think these are the challenges. These are the discussions that sometimes are very difficult to have. But that's, I think, the more important type of awareness that we underestimate. We all complain about it, that, okay, the policymaker is not instilling this policymaker, the contractors don't have the right skill set, the FMs aren't doing their job, but it's like, okay, well, this is where we need to do the awareness, and I think we need to be much more proactive.
Absolutely.
In that space.
Michelle, I want to know your thoughts from a developer's perspective in Masdar. And Masdar is a sustainable city, but how are you, educating end users into these processes?
So we try to communicate. First of all, I moved away from Masdar City in the last 5 years, but I can tell you what we used to do 5 years ago. We used to, whenever we have, first of all, with the tenants we have in Masdar City, we would give them like a document showing the benefits of the building. So this will be first, let's say, document showing how can they turn off the light, why should they turn off the light, why should they set the set point, and so on and so forth. But this is one document that maybe only 1% will read, right? So at the end, it's by seeing around them, we organize a lot of events in Masdar City. For example, we have festivals twice a year. In the festival, many people come from outside the city, and of course, the residents of the city will be participating. So many things around sustainability and raising awareness will happen. And that so this is on the educating tenants, or let's say occupants of the city. On facilities management, I used to personally do trainings for the facilities managers, for the people who are in charge of the BMS in every building. And as my colleague mentioned, there are many people coming from different backgrounds. Some of them, or most of them, have no incentive to save energy. Their job description is make sure the AC is on, minimize amounts of people complaining. If somebody is complaining, let's say the AC is not cold enough, they will just put the pump at 100% and move on. And these are the wrong ways to fix the problem, of course. So I try to educate them in ways of telling them about why should we not do that, what are the different alternatives to save energy, how should we look at the root cause of the problem instead of just pumping up the AC up. Like as you said, for example, about the building infiltration. Of course, if you have windows open in September, humidity will come in, and if humidity comes in, you will see condensation, you will not feel comfortable. So instead of turning on the AC to the maximum, close the window, or tell people that they should be closing the window. So these are things that we used to do naturally in Masdar city. And moving on to what I do now in the solar industry, talking about maintenance. Dust is a big problem here, dust and high temperature. Now, high temperature, we cannot deal with it because we cannot cool down the roof, but we can clean the panels. So cleaning the panels is a must, for example, here. And when we test and we see that if you don't clean the panel for a month, the performance will drop by minimum 10%, that's a very good indicator that you need to clean the panels twice a month. And now we do that. Now we are, and usually, we in our business model, we actually own and operate these solar plants. So we do it because we know if we clean more, we will get more profit from the plant. But this is also a message to anyone who actually owns solar plants that cleaning is important. And how do we communicate it? Is by showing numbers. I believe if you show numbers to someone, it's a given, it's a fact. Besides solar panels, even AC, I remember one time the DOE, Department of Energy in Abu Dhabi, launched a study on cleaning air conditioning outdoor units. And that was a study basically only showing the impact of just cleaning the condenser units. And by doing that, I think the numbers were actually maybe 5-10% saving by just cleaning the condensing units. Maybe my colleagues would tell more from their experiences on the AC units, but simple things can make a difference. But yes, there is lack of awareness. I don't think we're doing enough. Sessions like this and sessions organized by different NGOs are very important to show numbers and show figures. I think showing figures is needed. We should not only focus on theory. Like showing a U value will save you X. Okay, fine. But if you show an example. If you show, I remember 10 years ago, I visited the Dubai Chamber building, Dubai Chamber of Commerce building. And that was an amazing visit because for the first time, I see a live example of a lead for existing building, and they showed figures. And this is why in every conference I go to, I like to give figures, like the Siemens building figures I mentioned before. If you don't have facts, it's difficult to believe.
Making people relate to something is important. I was just saying that people usually look at structures. They are safe if they are structurally intact. But what happens inside the building, HVAC systems, air circulation, air handling units, U values, how do the occupants feel? You can't know it. So you can't overlook this. It's equally important. So, I second his thoughts about you have to have some sort of a model that allows people to understand the difference in efficiency from one system to the other.
Yeah, from a regulatory standpoint, education is important, and I always say that we need to convey a message that's very simple to understand, that your grandma or a 6-year-old can understand. Because when we talk about EER, kW per square meter, it sounds like Greek to people. One helpful way that the government is doing is energy efficiency labels. So this is makes things a bit easier to understand for end users. So you have, how many stars is this unit compared to this? And we're actually working now on coming up with, to Srinivasan's point, harmonization in this region, having one label for the entire GCC region. And also you mentioned incentives. Incentives is key. I'll give you a quick example. We're working with Kuwait, for example. Because when you touch finance with end users, it can encourage them to use higher efficiency products. So in the US, they give tax credits, they give money back if you use geothermal systems, if you use high. So in Kuwait, they're looking at encouraging their citizens to use higher energy efficiency by giving them money if they buy higher energy efficiency. So this is one way. I don't know if the UAE will ever consider something like this. Maybe they, if they have targets on, carbon emission that they don't want to exceed, they may have to revert to incentives, to use higher energy efficiency.
So leading me to my last question, I'm going to start with you, Amr. I think this question beautifully ends our conversation today. And it is, how do you see the HVAC industry evolving over the next decade? What does an ideal world look for you in the next 10 years if whatever we've spoken to today magically all happens?
Yeah, actually, first of all, let me just give some comment about the previous one in terms of education, the public. Actually, in ASHI, we are doing a lot of work to educate all stakeholders, actually. We are doing monthly through our CTTC, Charter Technology Transfer Committee in ASHI, monthly technical sessions. We are bringing DLs, distinguished lecturers from all around the world, to give really the latest standard of ASHI. And also we are doing a lot of guidelines. So recently, last week, we just have a big event with the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure to discuss about 62.1 hour, the new indoor air quality program and standards. And we are also working with Empower, for example, to set, let's say, a guidelines and a manual for how to build efficient district cooling system. So we are trying to do a lot, but sometimes also we need collaboration and coordination with all stakeholders because ASHI is a non-profitable organization. So that's why we are, our actually prime mover is our partners and our stakeholders. Back to your question, next 10 years, I feel that okay, we are in AI era now, and everything has become smart and intelligent. And I have seen also some products that can connect it to any building and to understand the behavior of the building, capture all the data, and give you some reports and give you also some, let's say, way to operate the buildings. And I feel in the coming future, we will see a lot of intelligence and artificial intelligence products that will come, and it will help us to understand what's going on, analyze what's going on, and take a decision after. So this is just my idea.
Thank you, Amr. Imran, what do you think?
No, I've been just on the public awareness again. Like there was a very interesting program which was launched by DEWA. It was called Solar Decathlon, targeted on universities, where they actually did the design and did the installation of that particular housing unit. So it's a very great initiative, I think, and there was a prize money associated to it as well. So it had the monetary benefit, it had the right awareness things, and going into the next generation, which are the university students, they need to learn, and they need to take it in the right direction. And then obviously from SIPSE, we have got the student design competition where we focus on similar approaches as well. And in terms of next 10 years, like my colleague mentioned here, is the era of AI technology, and I think all the colleagues and in their organization would be looking at it critically. As Ramboll, we are looking at new ways of working. We are looking to take in computational design, parametric design, to look at all the aspects, how we can promote more energy efficiency to have a better cooling system and efficient cooling system without oversizing, using the benchmarking of the data associated to it as well. And I think technology will play a major role going forward, and we need to embrace it and use it in our advantages, both on the design side, on the developer side, as well as the operation side, to bring in the synergies which we're talking about.
All right. Anyone else wants to add?
Yes. I'm sure everybody remembers the smart city phase. Smart cities around 10, 15 years ago, and we were promised that technology would change anything. And the challenge is, and BMS, I mean, 2008, I came to the UAE, and BMS was, a big promise about increasing efficiency of buildings. And I think at every stage of technology, we've had tools that we did not use. So, like, the challenge is who owns the data, and do we want to share it, and who do we share it with? So we go back to everybody mentioned lack of data. So I think tools will help us get the data easier doesn't mean the flow of information will change. And I think unless we get out of our silos, it will make it, we'll still move very slowly. And I'll give you an example that we learned from the Developers Forum. And Nabil has been with us, and Hassan as well from the ASHRAE committee. I've been in the building sector, so I transitioned out of not only the building sector, but since 2008. And I thought I knew it inside out. As soon as we sat with the bankers to talk about green finance, their language was completely different. Everything we were talking about, developers, consultants, contractors, suppliers, we were all speaking the same language. For them, it was completely different. And then everybody here will not move forward in terms of retrofitting, et cetera, without finance. And so this is where really we need to get outside of our comfort zone and talk to the other pieces of the supply chain that are not in that don't speak our language, or else policy will be much slower, the business case will be slower, developers will not catch on, et cetera. So it's really like encouraging for us to get outside of our comfort zone.
Just quickly to follow up on what Jamila said, you have consultants and you have manufacturers. For successful consultants, so the next 10 years will be the ones that, like Jamila said, will get out of their comfort zone. Because you have a lot of consultants that like to use certain systems. They're familiar with the chillers or with the unitary systems, and that's what they always use in their projects. They need to look at new technology, new energy efficient systems. That's from the consulting side and engineering developer side. From a manufacturing side, a successful manufacturers in the next 10 years is a manufacturer that not just going to sell boxes or equipment. They're going to sell energy efficiency, performance, service, energy monitoring, data monitoring, collection of data, and continuously adjusting their systems and to make sure that their equipment and buildings are efficient.
Great. Future is looking bright. Thank you so much, everyone, for that wonderful discussion. It was a pleasure to have all of you here.
I think we've all gained a deeper understanding of the challenges and the opportunities that lie in the industry. So yeah, on behalf of MEP Middle East and Construction Week, thank you for joining the strategy series that we held in partnership with Taqeef and Midea. So I think we should continue having these conversations and keep propelling the industry forward.